So Celia, thank you so much for joining us on the show. It is an honor to have you on.
It is my privilege to contribute my testimony to teach and help others understand how I survived and by which way uh, students and adults, anyone in the audience, can see that it's the generosity of people, not necessarily people of my own race, but just people with a good heart. And that is my story.
So, what's amazing is that you have been everywhere. You've been at synagogues, churches, museums. And earlier you mentioned to me that really touched me. You said you're willing to speak to anyone that would listen and learn. Why is it so important that people stop what they're doing and listen and learn about the Holocaust? What is so critical that we have to never stop listening and learning about the things that took place?
Because I believe that by listening to what I experienced, and that I owe my life to the generosity of a decent, caring human being who risked her life to save me. And that, regardless of color or race or religion, one human can help another. I'm alive and I've lived long enough now to see children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren. And all of that by the bravery and generosity of one not Jewish woman.
So please share with us what happened. What is your story? How were you saved?
Okay. Um, I was born in 1935. I had yet not gone to school. I was going to start school in September of 1942. We were occupied by Russians. Germans invaded. I spoke Polish. As I said, played with both Jewish and non-Jewish kids. I was always accepted. I was blonde, blue-eyed, spoke Polish, and played with, as I said, Polish and Jewish kids. Um, I did not yet go to school, but I was enrolled in a ballet recital. And that ballet recital was the highlight of my life at that time. Well, the day of the recital arrived, and I have a photo of myself dressed for that recital. I will tell you later how it came about. The day of the recital, the Germans invaded, and instantly the world changed. My father, I was an only child. My biological father was drafted to the Russian army, never to be seen or heard from again. Of course, my ballet recital was canceled. Um, I probably spent a day or more in home with my mom crying and not quite understanding, other than it just turned from light to dark overnight. But being a youngster, I go out and play with the same kids that I always played with in the backyard. Some were Jewish, but it was the backyard of a Catholic school, so the majority were not Jewish. Well, I'm sad and I'm upset, and I'm hoping that my friends will support me and help me feel better. But what happened is that as soon as I came out, they shied away from me like I carried some terrible disease, and pointed at me like I couldn't understand. But many years later, it's like reminded me, if you have unruly dog in your backyard, you call the ASPCA and they come and collect that unruly dog. Well, I didn't understand anything other than my dad is gone, my world changed. I'm hoping for friends to embrace me, but they point at me. Well, being pointed at meant that the person who collects unruly dogs collected me and maybe some other kids that were Jewish. I don't remember them, taken to the front of the house and made to walk up onto a truck on sort of a makeshift staircase. I mainly spoke Polish. One guy pushed me up that ladder. Another guy is manning the truck. And as I come up, I grab onto his pants of his leg and ask him in Polish, what did I do wrong? Why are you taking me on this truck? Because what I'm seeing on the truck is other children behind a chain. They're crying, they're vomiting, and they're hysterical. And I am speaking and appealing to this guy who's manning the truck. Do you have children of your own? I asked. How would you feel if your kids were on this truck? I didn't do anything wrong. I must have touched the sensitive note in his heart. He grabbed me by my long blonde braids and instructed me not to come back to the house from the backyard where they found me until nightfall. Because if I come back during the day, I will be pointed at again. I did as I was told. I ran around the streets, the marketplace. By the time I returned home, my biological mother was already mourning my death. No one came back from that truck. I did. Now I could no longer go out and play with friends. I'm alone with mom. It didn't take much time after that my mother and I and some other family members who lived in this multi-family dwelling where we live, we were forced to leave everything behind and go to the ghetto. In the ghetto, obviously, it was something that I couldn't understand. I came from a nice, it was an apartment or a dwelling in a house that we partially owned. Here we're in the ghetto with horrible conditions, with lack of food and illness and frequent raids. And mostly what I couldn't understand was that there was loud march music playing around the ghetto, the walls of the ghetto, march music. My parents loved dancing, but who dances to march music? And what I'm seeing is adults with shaven heads and the Star of David scratched out on their forehead, and they're dancing in circles. Being young, I couldn't understand. How could you dance to march music? Why would males and females both have clean shaven heads? Why would you want to dance when there is blood oozing from your forehead? But I was in the ghetto with my mom and an aunt, an uncle, and two cousins. Very tight living quarters. I guess I was a pretty well-behaved child, and they made me as comfortable as they could. It wasn't long after that the Germans were seeking out people who could be strong and work. And my mother, who was young, strong, beautiful, and charming, she was forced, against her will, of course, to work in a forced labor camp outside of the ghetto. Did she want to leave me alone? Of course not. Did she have an alternative or a choice? Of course not. She promised me that she will come and visit, to be strong, to be obedient, and I'm left in the care of my aunt, uncle, and aunt, and the two cousins. I was the younger, so I was given, a little bit of extra care. Well, now things got worse because um, the food became, lack of food became the way of life. Um, my cousins tried to entertain me as much as they could, but frequent acts of just Germans coming around and seeking out people to either take to their death or take them to forced labor camps. And certainly children. What do you need kids for? They can't work, they need to eat, they get sick. What do you need kids for, right? So my aunt and uncle, by sort of means of, like compensating someone who offered a place of hiding, whether it was say, a cellar beneath a basement or an attic, or if you lived anywhere close to a sewer. And if you were able to offer to the people who provided this hiding place either extra food or warm clothing or jewelry, but I didn't know any of it. So my aunt and uncle took care of this. Sometimes they brought me along with them to go into hiding during these raids. And sometimes I was permitted in. And one of the times when my aunt and uncle, and I don't know what they offered in payment for the hiding, they brought me along. And the person who was offering this hiding place and permitted my aunt, uncle, and my two cousins who were older than I, they permitted them in, but not I. They sort of knew that this may be a longer time, meaning it could last overnight or maybe a day and a night with no food, no electricity, no bathroom. Well, a young child would cry. And I was young, and the cry, my cry, or any young child, would give away everyone who was in hiding. So my aunt must have had a very difficult time making that decision, but she bent down and hugged me and whispered to me, Celia, you know how much we love you. We know how smart you are. So it's probably going to be over very shortly, maybe by tomorrow morning. Here's a dark blanket. Cover yourself with the blanket and go nearby, that house nearby where it's ruins. Cover yourself with the blanket. You'll sleep the night, and in the morning, we will probably be together again. Did I like what I was told? Not. But I didn't fight, nor did I reason. So I covered myself with the blanket. I did hear, screams of people, gunshots here and there, but I did fall asleep. And as I'm sleeping, I'm dreaming, I think, but I hear footsteps in my dream. And as the footsteps come closer, I realize I'm not dreaming because a voice rings out. And the voice is saying, Celia, Celia, if you are here, if you can hear me, we won't see you anymore. So maybe it didn't hit me right away, but it didn't take long to realize that all the people, including my family, were discovered in their place of hiding. I never saw them again, and I'm alone, a youngster. I have no one to appeal to. My mom is in a forced labor camp outside of the ghetto. She is brought in periodically for a daily visit, but I had no way of knowing when, where, or how to contact her. So, what does a little girl do? Went around and found babies. Little girls like playing with dolls. So, when raids would come around, parents could not take their infants or little babies into hiding with them. So they'd leave them in their cribs or carriages, whatever. And the Germans came looking for hidden Jews. If a baby cried, the cry of the baby annoyed them. And they take the butt of their gun and permanently silence the baby. But I, having no one and nothing to do, played with the babies. So if the parents left around um, a bottle or a pacifier, or even a little bowl with sugared water and a piece of cotton, if I put that around the baby's lips while the Germans are passing, and the baby didn't cry, then the baby lived. And if the parents survived and found their baby alive, now they would share a bit of their food rations with me. They'd cut my hair and put kerosene over me because I was covered with lice. I had no one. I'm alone, but I'm not reasoning. I only know that I need to live. And I can, it's a poor comparison, but you know, if you see a cockroach crawling on the floor, you step on it. You think you got it, you stepped on it, but you lift your foot and the cockroach is running away still. That's where I was. If I prevented the baby from crying, then the Germans would go further seeking other Jews and the baby would be alive. So if the parents came back and found their baby alive, they took a little care of me. Some time passed, and mom, who worked in a forced labor camp in Lvov, a well-known camp, it is actually at Yad Vashem, and she and other inmates would be brought in, I don't remember the frequency, to the ghetto to see other family members, never knowing whether whether you'd find them alive or not. She came back once, asked for her brother, no one saw them. She went back thinking that her brother, his family, and her daughter were gone. She came back a second time, and this time they mentioned, oh, there's this little girl and she plays with babies. She found me and explained to me the situation. And she said I was very sick and malnourished and all kinds of diseases. She took me to a doctor in the ghetto. He gave me some medicine. I guess I was smart enough to follow the instructions. Mom left. She came back again and she said, Celia, I have had contact with a Polish family who happened to remember you when my father had a shop and he was a sheet metal worker and he would make little trinkets out of metal. So this couple came to admire or do something in my father's shop. I was very excited about that ballet recital, and I must have been there on a Sunday, and I wore a costume, and I have a photo of that. If you have the time, I will show it to you. So they played with me and admired the dress, which at that time she was a famous actress, Shirley Temple, but I forgot about them. But these people were childless. When mom realized that if she doesn't find a place for me, I will perish and die in the ghetto. Being charming as she was, and obviously very fortunate, she approached some of the guards of the camp where mom was stationed at. She went to this couple and told them, "Do you remember that little girl you met in my husband's shop? You admired her Shirley Temple dress. Well, she's in the ghetto. My husband is gone. He probably will never be back. I certainly won't live. If I can get this child to you, would you want her as your daughter?" They agreed. More time passed. I didn't know about any of it, but mom came back. She said, "Look, I found a family. They know you and they like you. And I'm sure that if you want to live, you will follow the directions and you will have a chance of life if you escape the ghetto." I'll skip some details, but I'll go to the fact I tried once, as mom told me, to sneak underneath the walls of the ghetto during the night, covered with a blanket, but I saw lights and guns and I chickened out. Now more time passed, and mom, who was very beautiful and just had, you know, the good fortune of appealing to people, regardless that they were not Jewish. And she said, "I'm coming to tell you that this is your last opportunity to escape, because now the ghetto is going to be exterminated. So let's try with that dark blanket that you have at the dusk of day, when I and the other um, campers that I came in with and walk out, you mingle in between us, cover yourself with the blanket, and maybe if they don't notice you, you'll come through the gates of the ghetto. There is some sort of a little wooded area. You stay there. Make sure you cover your nose because it's March. It was Purim. The moon is out, but you cover your nose. You're blonde, you're blue-eyed, yes, but you have a long nose, and that may give you away as a Jewess." I did as I was told. I succeeded. And when I came out thinking a wooded area, oh my God, there's going to be a wolf or a bear, whatever. But from the distance, I recognized that it was a park that my dad used to bring me to on Sundays for playing and merry-go-rounds and whatever. I don't remember by what means, but during the night, I must have dozed off, and mom came and brought me to the suburbs of town to this family who knew me, but I had no idea of who they were or what they were doing. All I know is in the driveway, mom and I hugged. Neither one of us cried, but we both knew that we will never see each other again. But I was sick, malnourished, and at the door stood sort of a middle-aged female, a gentleman behind her, and two older people behind them. Mom left quickly. The woman who was at the door opened her arms, brought me into the house, and this is now dark. the end of day, and sat me down and whispered in Polish, which was mainly the only language I spoke, and said to me that these are the rules that I must follow in order to stay with them. Number one, I am never to go near a window. I am never to open the curtain. I am never to wear shoes in the house. They assigned a sleeping area for me in the basement, inside a closet, not a bed, but whatever, blankets or a mattress. Whenever the doorbell rang, I was to run down and hide in that closet. Never to be heard from or be around when anyone was in the house. I was introduced to, I didn't remember them, but they did remember me. So it was a Polish woman, her husband, my Polish father, who was a professor, and the parents, a grandma and a grandpa. It appears that they were academics, the younger couple, but they lived with the grandparents in the suburbs of town. And the grandparents in the back of their house had a barn, but only animals for their own use, a cow, a goat, and some chickens for eggs. As I healed, because they caught my diseases, they went to the doctor. They were immediately suspected, but they shared their medicine with me and they cured me. And I became accustomed to them, and they loved me, and my grandmother coddled me. And slowly I began calling them mom and dad, and, Polish expression for Bobby and Zaida, and told me that soon the war will be over and I'll be able to see the animals and milk the cow and see how the eggs are laid. And when they brought up, I felt the warm eggs and the milk. So I am so happy. Can't wait to be with kids outside, but I'm being treated as a little princess, someone that has parents and grandparents. I put my past away. My grandmother started teaching me how to pray every night before I would go to sleep in the basement, made a bed. I would kneel, cross myself, and couldn't wait for the day that I'd be in a church, either christened or whatever, and I'd be their daughter, and soon I'd play with the kids. And now I have a mom and a dad and grandparents, and I put the ugly past of the ghetto and those experiences away. I was quite happy, and they indulged me. Approximately a year or a little over a year, I slept in the basement. I only was allowed to wear socks. One morning, I shuffled upstairs, and the picture window that faced the house directly across the street, 4 members of my family are facing the window in front of them. I saw their backs, but only my grandmother heard me shuffle up because I'm wearing, they were so intent on watching or seeing what they saw across the street. Because they didn't hear me immediately, my eyes focused on what they were watching. And what that was 2 adults and 2 children publicly hung directly across the street from our window. Obviously, everyone was hysterical, but we had a family sit down, and my Polish professor father, who now treated me like his own little girl and coddled me and read me books. And he sat down and explained that the reason what we saw was that this couple across the street were hung as punishment because they were saving two children. Either it was a boy and girl, it could have been a brother and sister, or just two children. And now it became an issue that they will be seeking other homes, and that is no longer safe for me to stay with them.
Oh, man.
He would set out and find a different, means of saving me and themselves. I could no longer stay with them. I didn't give it much thought. I did pray, and hopefully, I prayed that they would not let me die. So a day or two passed, and my Polish father came back saying that the only way he found to keep me alive is he found that there was some boats that were children that would go to children who had no parents alone, and they were going to ship these orphans to what was then Palestine. These were children who were left without parents. There is nothing else. They would bring me to that orphanage that would then ultimately bring me to Palestine. My Polish mother was very upset about it. I don't know that I quite understood it, but said our tearful goodbyes and packed my little few belongings. The next morning, after saying our tearful goodbyes and tears, we walk out through the back of the house. Why are we walking through the back of the house? I'm thinking, oh, well, they want me to finally, for last time, see the animals in the barn. So I went along and whispers, and we get to the barn, and my beautiful Polish mother sits me down on the steps and faces me and whispers as close as you and I are now, and says to me, Celia, I love you so much, and I am so afraid that you may not make it to your destination alive. And because you're such a good girl, how would you feel if I hid you in my barn? And remember, I have a turn. The grandfather was already not up to it, but every third day was her turn to feed the animals. So if I hid you in the barn, and I will bring you food only when it is my turn to feed the animals, but you're not going to be alone. You're going to have a friend. Wow, I'm going to have a friend, a little girl. I can finally have someone to play with and chat. Of course, I agreed. So she took the pitchfork, separated the hay, and way up on top, I'm expecting to see this little friend. But what I see is a emaciated, unrecognizable woman who is whispering names of endearment that sort of strike a bell, but I can't put it together. And she's trying, and she's unrecognizable. Who is this person? And because she couldn't, and it's all whispers so that no one could hear. And finally she says, Celia, don't you remember your ballet recital, which was the highlight of my life? So you can guess, who was this person?
I don't know, your mother?
Yes,
Wow.
it was my biological mother, who by the notified or told by the guards of the ghetto
Wow.
Polish guards who liked her and told her, Sonia, the camp where you're working at now is going to be exterminated. If you have anywhere to go and hide, you best do it because tomorrow will be too late. Having nowhere else to run, this is about a year or more since she has brought me to this family. She
Wow.
came to them, to the woman only, and said to her, I'm not coming here to put you or my child in danger, but is there anywhere on your property or around you where I might just die of natural causes, not to inflict any kind of hardships on you, your family, or my child whom you're raising? This Polish angel woman hid my mother in the barn for
Wow.
almost a year while I was upstairs thriving. But because she was alone, because she only got food either once in 3 or 4 days, the beautiful mother that I remembered was not recognizable.
Wow.
Obviously, we were reunited, despite of the fact that the reason I did accept her finally is because she remembered the ballet recital, and that was, all I dreamt about. I went together with her. She rebuilt my life until that point. And now, because they found Jewish children in the neighborhood, hidden kids, they came around often with pitchforks looking for hidden Jews. But now there were two of us. One was pushed the other out of the way when they saw the pitchfork coming.
Wow.
One was able to sleep while the other would make a noise so that the cats and the rats wouldn't come at us. One of us was able to sleep while the other one was able to stay awake in case there was you know, some things happening. We could only speak in whispers because the family upstairs, meaning my Polish father and the grandparents,
Didn't even know.
they didn't know that anyone is there. They couldn't hear voices. Mom built back my life up until that point and told me that if she loves me, all she did was to save my life. But if she doesn't make it, I have this beautiful Polish mother and family that will help me to live. We stayed there probably a year and a half. I was initially strong enough still to go down and get some of the extra food that was soaking in the barrels to have a little extra. But then even I got weak. Um, One of us was able to make a noise so that the rats wouldn't come at us. We made it. No one upstairs knew. She would come every third or fourth day with one empty pail, one pail with water, and one pail with food. We stayed there probably an additional maybe year and a half. She
Wow.
would come every third day, bring us the updates of where the war is going, and finally came and told us that we were liberated. I do not remember by what means of transportation we got back to the house that was ours pre-war,
Wow.
but that house we were liberated by Russians. That house was now set up as a Russian camp. And the backyard where my friends pointed me out as the, dirty Jew was now set up, with Russian army and whatever. They slowly nursed us back to health, taught us how to eat and speak in normal tones because all we knew was whisper.
Wow.
And a few months after that, still in the house that was ours pre-war, the super of our pre-war time was still there. He received a letter from someone addressed to my mother and my name, which is my last name was Rapp, Rapp. He couldn't know who it was. He showed mom the letter. Mom couldn't recognize the name, but she recognized the handwriting. The letter was from my biological father, who
Wow.
escaped the Russian army and survived in a different part of Russia, working because he was in the sheet metal line. And I don't know the details of how, but he came, um, back to Lvov, which is the town where I was born and survived. And I don't have them handy, but if you have a moment or another time, I will show you the photo that was of myself dressed for that ballet recital, which was the highlight. When he came off the whatever boat or plane, whatever, and he wanted to open his arm and embrace me. And he said, I'm your father. You're my father. Where have you been? I had a loving father and I had to leave him. But he pulled out that photograph of myself
Wow.
dressed for that ballet recital. And it was at that time famous actress Shirley Temple. And that's how we built back our life. We left Poland, went on through different parts, wound up in a displaced person camp in Germany. We had not any knowledge of any family that survived, but through the Hayas in the displaced person camp, mom mentioned a brother who immigrated to the United States pre-war. They got in touch with him, and he sort of sponsored and guaranteed, and we came to the United States on August 27th in 1949.
Wow.
A little bit of schooling that I had in the DP camps, was a little English, a little Hebrew. I'm 10 years old, but I don't know how to write or anything because I had no school. But I learned quickly. A lot of the survivors were the teachers. So I learned a little English, a little Hebrew, came to America. My dad signed me in for school and lived in a very small little apartment on the Lower East Side. I didn't have friends because I was teacher's pet. All I was interested in was learning. And shortly after, I heard some crying with my parents. And what I got out of that is that mom wasn't feeling well, couldn't afford a doctor. They went to a clinic and they told her that she's gaining weight and going through menopause due to the ravages of the war. But that turned out to be the wrong diagnosis. And mom was expecting a baby.
Wow.
And my father said, we can't have a baby. Celia has to go to school and we both have to work in order to make a life. But Celia took care of babies. You can't just give the baby away. So I promised that I would do everything I can. And 1 month short, or 3 weeks short of my 15th birthday, mom had a baby boy. She
Wow.
went into severe postpartum depression. I did as best as I could to raise this baby. And from school, from the high school that I went to, they did send in social workers. And obviously, the baby grew and became the apple of my father's eye. And he is now obviously a grandfather. His children, which means 2 nephews, are now my grandchildren.
Wow.
And my mother was alive. She died, mom passed like, I think 13 years ago. She wanted to tell my children the story, but I said no. I was born the day I arrived to America, which was August of 1949. I
Wow.
didn't want to remember the past, but I have 3 children. The oldest and the youngest are 10 years apart. And the one that was the youngest became involved in the Museum of Jewish Heritage, the initial building of it. And slowly she convinced me that I should share this story with children. So I started in the late 90s, and the response, the curiosity that I saw from the children made me realize how important it is to tell and teach this story, that it was a non-Jewish human woman and a human being with soul and heart that saved me and my mom. And now, Kanahara, we have a beautiful family of children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. We never found the woman, even though we had many, people, organizations looking for them, but they were academics. They did not want to stay under Russian rule, which Lvov was at that time. They left, moved on someplace to Great Britain, and we were never able to find them. And now, as the years pass, and now that I am getting on, I still feel that it is important to share this story regardless of color, race, faith. There are good people who save innocent people. And that's what I must speak and teach the present and future generation. This is the photo of that ballet recital that was like the highlight of my life.
Move it over a
My
little bit.
father,
I don't see it. Perfect. Okay.
my father had the original. This is a copy, but I have the original that he had with him in 1940. I'm not sure. I think middle of 42. He had it with him. And when I said, "You're not my father,"
Pulled it out.
this is what he brought out, the original.
You move
That
it over a
was
little
the,
bit.
I
Move it a
beg your
little.
pardon?
Move it the other way, because I'm not seeing it. More. No, other way. That way. Perfect. There you go. Wow.
Okay. So now I realize, how could he have the photo if it wasn't, if he
look like Shirley
wasn't my
Temple.
father? This
Wow.
is the aunt and uncle in whose care I was left. These, can you see this?
A little bit further to the other side. There you go. There. Wow.
They are the ones that went into hiding where I wasn't permitted. They all went to their death.
Wow.
I wasn't permitted in, and I'm here telling you the story.
Wow.
So they perished. They were slightly older than I at the time, the two cousins.
Wow.
This is when I started, partaking and working at the museum. Already, I met, remember, at Koch,
Yeah.
the mayor. This was post-war displaced person camp.
On the other side. There we go.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Schools, in the displaced person camps.
Wow.
Okay. Again, a picture of myself, post-war. This is actually dated 1946, the original.
Wow.
My father's signature. That was that. This is a photo of another one of my mom's brothers who also survived hidden. They survived. So that was the only other family that survived the war.
Wow.
And when we came to the United States, he's the one that, helped my father get a job and, all of that. And out of this, only one person, only she is still alive. Wow. This is my older cousin. I think this was Lauren's bat mitzvah. And the lady in the center, the pink dress, that was my mom.
Move it over a little bit. Just a little all the way. There we go. Oh, wow. Okay, wonderful.
So, yeah, you see the woman in the center with the pink dress. So that was my mom. The rest are my three children, my in-law kids, and the grandkids.
Beautiful.
And now I have, Baruch Hashem, 7 grandchildren and 7 great-grandchildren.
Hashem blessed you.
So, right, and all of that by the bravery and generosity by one decent human being, not Jewish.
Wow, what a story.
So, okay,
Thank
so
you. It was such an
of course,
incredible story. I'm
well,
so moved, and thank you so
okay,
much for sharing it.
but of course, it's I can't say that it's my pleasure, but it is definitely my obligation.
Yeah,
It is important to tell because when I speak to students, whether they come to the museum or whether I go to a school where the children will get up and say, you couldn't make up this story, but my mother's boyfriend, my uncle, but what are you listening? It never happened. These Jews are making it up, but you couldn't make this up, right? So they call me, they write me letters, they come to visit, and I'm doing many different programs. Now I'm doing witness theater, where,
wow.
are you familiar with that?
No,
Witness theater, where you tell your story. This is UJA is running it,
wow,
where children listen to the story and then they act it out.
wow,
Each child takes on the, the character, one being my biological mother, one being my Polish mother, myself. So they act it out. So I do many different programs where, the story is being told and it appeals to, schools, as I said, Jewish, not Jewish. It's just something that you need to, keep alive. And unfortunately now, during this difficult time of COVID, I am more reminded than ever, being alone for such a long time, not being able to, go out unless you wear a mask. But I was alone all these years during the war. I
right,
couldn't go out unless I wore my Jewish band,
right.
being afraid to, mingle with people because I'm Jewish and you can't be, a friend of Jew. Now it doesn't matter. I can't be with people. I could spread COVID.
Yeah,
So,
brings
the
that up.
current, right, the January 6th attack on, on the Capitol, that really set me off very bad.
Right.
Um, and some other incidents, I won't take your time, like the story that appeared of mine on the, in the New York Times, something about a cat. But it's not important now. If you we'll speak another time and I'll tell you about that.
Okay, I
Okay.
look forward to it.
So, okay.
Forward
So
to it.
anything else, Rabbi, that I can,
You were.
this is the family that perished.
Oh wow.
This is the whole family that perished.
Wow.
They were allowed into hiding. I was not.
Wow.
I'm
Phil, it's
here
so
and they're not.
amazing. I got to tell you what an incredible story and honor to meet you. I'm so excited for people to hear this interview. I know it's going to really we thank God have listeners from all over the world, and I know it's going to really inspire them. And thank you
Well,
so very much. Really,
and
your
please do not
bravery.
hesitate, Rabbi, if there is, as long as you let me know before, if there is anyone that wants to contact me or ask for, other things, if you let me know, I'll be always pleased to cooperate and help out.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Of course.
Nice to see you.
Nice to
Nice to
meet
meet
you.
you.
You
You should
too.
get nachas from all of your grandkids and great
Amen.
grandkids.
I
You should
already
only know
do, and
something.
there's always more to come. And
Amen.
look, my youngest granddaughter just gifted me with a beautiful gift of a brand new great grandchild. So I am
Nachas, nachas.
indeed right. And Kanahara, all of them are bright and healthy
Baruch
and
Hashem.
well educated. And I am indeed blessed.
Baruch Hashem.
Pleasure meeting you.
Nice to meet
and
you.
have
as
a
well.
good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for watching. For more content, like and subscribe, and be sure to tune in live every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern at theshabbatshow.com or right here on YouTube.